Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to our Saturday business meeting. Today is a very, very golden opportunity for us to learn from our mentor, our upline presidency member, our judge, author from Cape Town, South Africa, Mr. Mike Van Venter. He's the gentleman that is behind our success, always mentoring us, always showing us the way, always equipping us. And I would want to really, really proudly say that today we are who we are. We are growing into strong and stable leaders because of the mentorship that Mr. Mike is giving us. So today we are here to learn from him the wisdom that he's been able to collect for over 40 years with the Neolife, so that we can tap into that wisdom and we see how to apply in our business so that we can be able to grow our businesses so that we can live a life of our dreams. So thank you so much, Mike, for honoring our invitation. You can take it on from here.
Thank you, Justice. It's always wonderful to connect with you, you and the team. I always have to add that the first prize would be to be with you physically, but for a number of reasons that has not been possible for a while. But still, it's such a privilege to connect with you, and we should be thankful for the gift of social media. And I think that's one of the good things that came out of COVID for us, is that the business made a shift towards using Zoom and social media much more than we had before. And now our reach has just gone so much wider. We can reach people where previously it was not possible. So anyway, our story in Neolife, and I was taken back today quite a bit, because at our distributor center, the manager had just retired, a wonderful, wonderful lady, and the company had arranged for a farewell, call it a party. And some of the old people were also there, people who've been in the business even longer than we have. And, you know, seeing people like that and realizing the sort of the history of the business and the bond between people. It was so lovely to just, as different teams, be together, and, you know, we're there as one. We met up with Neolife in 1983. Now, May, that will be 42 years ago. That is more than half of my life. And what happened is I was a minister in church. It's what I always knew I had to be and wanted to be, even since before I went to school. So my whole schooling was aimed at going into ministry. I did that. I was serving in a city church for 3 years, and then moved to being an army chaplain. And it's probably about 2 years or so into that somebody that I'd lost contact with since university days, he was also a minister, phoned me one day and said he's coming to see me. Now, they lived in the town where we were. And I never even thought that he knew that we were there. But they joined the business, and he was coming back to this town to see if he could recruit some people into the business. I don't think he signed up anyone else, but thankfully he got to me. I understood nothing of what he showed me, really. I promise you, I had no idea. In fact, I went home that lunchtime and told my wife, Renee, that I'd seen a way to make more money. And of course, she wanted to know how, and I said, I don't know. But what counted in our favor was that we really needed to make more money. See, my wife used to be a teacher, but we lived in an army base. We had 3 of our 4 children. They were all still preschool. There was no way that she could continue teaching. She had to look after the children, which is what we wanted. But what that meant is that eventually my salary just wasn't enough anymore. And at that stage, being a chaplain, I was employed by the government with a government salary. And even if I tried working harder than I did, which was not really possible, but even if I did, it would mean more money. And that's probably the experience of most people in a job. You can work much harder than anybody else, but you still just get paid so much. Yeah, what I was paid ended up not being enough. Not because we were overspending. Even to this day, we live fairly frugally. We don't throw money around. But it was just not enough. So I was really open to finding ways of earning more money. So what we did that Saturday, after this guy Peter come to see me, we traveled 200 kilometers to where they lived. And his sponsor was also relatively new in the business, directly under Charlie. They showed us the products, they gave us a nice lunch, and we talked. And I still didn't have a very clear idea. So when we left, we weren't ready to commit. We said, well, think about it, that week one. But we hadn't gone very far when we turned to each other and said, well, why not? Because the little money that we needed to start those days was so little that I knew the bank would lend me that as well. So that's how we decided to get going. I still definitely didn't see the big picture or understand the nature of the business. At best, I thought, now those days, what happened is that we worked on what was called the party plan. The wife would go and find somebody, another woman, to invite some of her friends around. And those days, we mostly had the cleaning products. And you go and demonstrate Super 10 and LDC and the G1 and sell some products at this party. Then you'd have to have a next party and a next party. There was no idea of building a network. But 2 things put me on the road to where we all are today. The first is the next month or 2 after we joined, the company had a big convention, or as we call it these days, a summit in Durban, which is about 1,000 kilometers from where we lived. And my sponsor in his upline said, you've got to go to this. And I said, well, I can't. 2 nights, no hotel, I haven't got the money, but I believe God moved me. Obviously, I borrowed more money from the bank, drove down with him. And what I saw there, I continue to say is what I believe why we are having this conversation this evening. I think I had not gone to that summit, we might have done what so many other people did. You go along a little while and not much is happening and you quit. But at that convention in 1983, I remember apartheid only ended in 1994. So we were still very deep in apartheid. Yet there was in the Durban City Hall a group of all races, about 5,000 people, in a sense of harmony, and I would even call it love, that I don't know how the company managed that, because those days in South Africa, you didn't have mixed meetings like that. And what also made a huge impression on me, a lot of the black people from the area where we come from, the Eastern Cape, although now we live in the Western Cape in Cape Town, that is a very poor rural area. very, very poor, even to this day. Yet I saw people from there earning money that no Mzungu that I knew was earning that kind of money. So that left the impression on me that, uh, there's more to this business in terms of money than I thought. And what I also saw there is that this was a company that is honest, it's caring, it's a company with a heart. Now, having left that convention, I was still not now ready to really get going because, as I said, I was working very, very long hours, often 7 days a week. And my idea was that, Renee should go and demonstrate products and sell products. But what also happened is that I so liked the people and the environment of the business that I sometimes traveled to Port Elizabeth, which was uh, probably about, I'd say 2-3 hours away from where we lived, to go to a Monday night training. And sometimes we'd go there for a Saturday afternoon training. Not because we had any big ideas of what was going to happen, just because we wanted to go there. We felt at home and we felt comfortable. And there's a lesson in that. Whenever we have any get together, we must make very sure that the vibe, the feeling of that event is positive and friendly and open. There must now be sad faces and grumbling and backstabbing, especially. People must feel welcome. They must feel valued. They must feel that they would want to come back. So that's very important that we work on the atmosphere we create whenever we come together. But what also happened when we joined, those days there was a set of cassette tapes and some literature. Now, some of you may not even know what a cassette tape is. That was before we had CDs, which we don't have anymore, by Jim Rohn, which you probably have heard of or come across. He is said to be the father of America's business philosophy. Now, the idea of business philosophy may sound strange. I mean, it's business. You sell things and that's it. But the philosophy that drives you is what could make your business successful or not. Now, I'm not going to expand on that too much now. Now, I majored in psychology. I have another degree in theology. And you know what? At that stage in my life, I'd never heard of a thing called personal development. Never. Until I got this set of tapes by Jim Rohn. Now, the car I drove wasn't very grand. It didn't have a cassette player in. Those days, the better cars had cassette players. Later on, they had CD players. Now they have your ports and everything that you plug in your stuff. I had a Walkman. Now, I think now you don't know what I'm talking about. A Walkman was about this big. It was a mini cassette player. You plugged in earphones. I had this lying on the passenger seat. And whenever I was driving, uh, like when I went to Port Elizabeth, that's about 130 kilometers for training, or sometimes I had to go for army business. I'd be listening to Jim Rohn. And that opened a whole new world. Positive person. Mm. And also, I started reading books. I remember the first book that we were introduced to was Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. Now, I thought that was such a weird book. You know, as a Christian, he was talking about the universe, where we would talk about God. And I was sort of reluctant to accept what he said. But later on, I learned that the way he brought across the principles that's in that book, I think it was 16, if I remember correctly, are actually things that you find in the Bible as well. It was just presented in a different way. And that set me on a whole new road of discovery in terms of in personal development, working on and being aware of one's attitude. See, many people aren't aware of their attitude. It's just what it is. But if you can't identify, as it were, your attitude and say, oh, my attitude is stinking, how can you correct it? Now, what I learned along the process over the years is that you never get to a point where you're perfect, where you can't learn anymore. In fact, the other day in church, one of our ministers is a youngish guy. He could be my son. And he was saying something that I said, my goodness, I never knew that. And I had to laugh at myself because I have so much more experience than he has. Maybe not, but at least counting in years. And that reminded me of a saying that I learned in the business as well. When you're ripe, you know, like a fruit, when you think you've reached maturity, you know it all, you're at your best. When you're ripe, you rot. Remember, a fruit that is ripe can only go one way. It can't get riper, it will only rot. So when you're ripe, you rot. When you're green, you grow. When you're ripe, you rot. When you're green, you grow. And that awoke in me the realization that one should never stop learning. And today it is still my passion to learn. And the other day, for instance, at our church, I saw a book on dogmatics by one of the professors I had, and I borrowed that book because I thought, well, you know, it's time for me to just refresh a bit. Now, in terms of the business, there is so much material that we can use because we all need to keep growing. Because as you grow, as you become a stronger leader, a better equipped leader, as you lead more and more by example, people develop trust in you and they're able to follow you. You see, we can't lead people further than when we are. We can't lead people further than where we are. And that process never stops. You know, they say you're never too old to learn. The other side to that story is when you stop learning is when you're old. Because then you rot. You're going downhill. And that to me is one of the wonderful things of this business. It's not about making money. It's not just about the health. It's not about all the incentives and the travel. Well, those things are important. That's why we're in the business. But also this thing of giving us the opportunity to become better. And that is so valuable. You know, I think of the talents in the Bible where the king gave 3 of his slaves a certain amount of money. One got more, the one got little less, and the one got very little. And the one who got little was scared to use what he had, and he was severely punished. The one who had a little bit more worked with what he had. He doubled what he had, but it wasn't as much as the one who had more. But when the owner came back, he didn't compare the two, but both had done their best. And that is what counts. That's what I believe God also requires of us, to become the best we can be. And you know, one of the things I learned in the business also is that the temptation is always there to compare ourselves to other people. And what you'll find, there will always be people who move faster than you, who go higher than you, who are better than you. There are many people like that in our business, in terms of myself. But it's pointless worrying about that. That's them. They're going down the road God meant for them. You go down your road, and you see, if we just look at the people who are doing better than us, we could become jealous. And that's a negative attitude. We don't need that in our lives. On the other hand, if we look at people who are slower than us and battling, we could become proud, prideful. So, oh, you know, look at them, we're so much better. That's wrong also. So the idea is not to compete with other people, to try and be bigger and faster and better than anybody else. The idea is to be the best you, the best me that we can be. And we have the tools in, in the business and the support. But still, it's something that we've got to make use of and do. You see, we could go into the best hotel and have this beautiful buffet laid out in front of us. But if we don't eat, as far as we're concerned, that food means nothing to us. So, you know, that's one of the most important things I learned in the business. And what I also learned, and that shows you how one has got to move from where you are to a different or a better place. When we joined the business, it was all about us. We needed to make money, which is true. We needed to make money. And everybody I approached was to see what I can get out of them. I am ashamed to admit that, but that's how it was. As time grew, I learned that that is the wrong attitude. That's the wrong approach. Because people feel hunted. They feel you're chasing them. People are generally not stupid. They may not be consciously aware of it, but they get this feeling that this person is out to get me. So it is very important, I learned, to change one's thinking and focus on the people you approach and you work with. And try and help them achieve what they want. First of all, make them hungry. You know, we've got a saying in South Africa, you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. Take the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. If that horse doesn't want to drink, you can't. Except if you first make that horse very thirsty. And that is sometimes what we need to do also when we approach people. Try and uncover what they're thirsty for. In other words, try and let them tell you their needs. Now, the needs are the most basic things. They need money for school fees. They need money for food. They need money for the very basics. And sometimes people are so caught up just in the needs that they can't think beyond that. But beyond needs are what we call the wants. I need a car, but what I want is a newer, better, more reliable car. So that's a bit of a step up. But now maybe I get to a stage where I have a nicer car. It's not giving me trouble all the time. It takes me comfortably to where I want to go. But man, then I see this new whatever. So, I'd really love to have that. That's the dream category. And our job is when we approach people is to try and let them focus on what it is they need, which they mostly need or know, but also to try and take them a step further. And I find that sometimes, well, at least here in South Africa, you talk to people. I used to say to people, what are your dreams? Huh? Dreams? What are you talking about? We say that those people are dream dead. They haven't got dreams anymore. They're so busy trying to survive, they can't think of anything beyond mere survival. But the fact is, we can only motivate people on what they either need, want, or dream of. And know they can't have if they keep doing what they're doing. And only then can we come in and say to them, okay, I can show you a way in which you can achieve that. So it's about them, helping them see an opportunity. And really, we need to learn to, I'm not going to go into that in detail, to present properly. Because we can present sometimes in a way that will put people off and rob them of the opportunity. Just shortly, it means firstly not talking too much, not you doing all the talking, but asking questions, listening to them, and just give them enough of an idea. That is if you do a one-on-one. And then try and follow up, unless they're there, and then commit. Follow up, maybe getting them to a meeting or to a Zoom presentation or whatever you're going to do. But never push people. Try and take them with you. Why? Because as I started saying this is what I learned. If it's all about me, people are going to sense that. They're going to say, no, this guy just wants to use us. But if my focus is on them, it's a different vibe. It's a different feeling that you portray, which is more likely to let people like you and listen to you and come with you. And then what I also learned, if that's the way you approach people and they still end up saying no, then you don't have to feel bad about that. You haven't lost anything. You never had them. You're not going to have them, so what have you lost? You've lost nothing. They are the losers. So if it's about them and not about you, you see, if it's about you and somebody says no, oh, I'm losing. And that creates a negative attitude in oneself. And now you start pushing people and trying to talk them into what you want them to do. But if it's about them and they say no, it's about them. It's their problem. It's their loss. It's not your loss. And that frees you up to just go to the next person without the burden of, oh, I've lost. I've lost 4 or 5 times already this month. So that's very important. And then what I also learned is that new life is not separated from life. You know, sometimes when people start new in the business, it sounds so wonderful that they think, oh, this is going to be plain sailing. It's going to be easy. There's never going to be any challenges. And that is simply not true. You will have challenges in the business. One of the best examples of that is a Zulu couple in South Africa, Mdu and Fikile Mokoena. They joined the same time as we did. They're an example of people who moved much faster than we ever did, because in short time they became 5 diamond. And then they started in 1983 as well. Then in the late 80s, there was a lot of political unrest there in KwaZulu-Natal. A lot of killings, and it was bad. And they lost a lot of their business. And they dropped right down to 1 ruby. Now, can you imagine from 5 diamond, 4 diamond, 3 diamond, 2 diamond, 1 diamond, 5 ruby, 4 ruby, 3 ruby, 2 ruby, 1 ruby, 10 levels. Now, most people, if they drop that far, would just say, oh, give up. You know what? In a few short years, they were back at 5 ruby, which is fantastic. They became, at least not 5 ruby, 5 diamond. They became 5 diamond twice in the time that it took me to become 5 ruby. So they had a huge, huge challenge. You know, the team members were physically killed. The fact is that we will have challenges. I've had challenges in my business, plenty. There was a time when my business at its top was doing like 1.5 million points a month. I had a 4 ruby, at least I keep saying ruby, a 4 diamond and a 3 diamond and a 4 diamond in Kenya, plus a PT member who were doing very well. But they were messing up. Their philosophy was not sound. Cheating and cutting corners, that was okay. But it wasn't, because in the end it cost them the business. And the sad thing is that gave the business a bad name, because people now heard of Neolife, oh, because they heard of somebody who was damaged through that experience. So my business dropped significantly from there. And it's still recovering and going back. But what I do know is that if we keep going, it can always be better. So no matter what happens, if we keep going, it can be much better. Now, take when COVID came. A lot of businesses closed down. A lot of businesses suffered. What happened to us? Our business grew. We did better and better each month in COVID. And in my own downline, there were 7 or 8 directors developing in America. Not that I had anything to do with it. That happened downline out of 13. So when something as bad as COVID came along and everybody else was really battling, we could move ahead. So COVID, but things could get better for us. And even now, I always say, especially to those who've been in the business a longer time, don't look back at what perhaps hasn't happened. Or look back and say, well, I thought I'd be much further. You're not, I'm not. What has happened has happened. We can't change that. But as we go ahead, if we could keep putting in the effort, will get better. And you know, the beauty of our business, and that's what one of the things I had to learn along the way, is in this multiplication factor. You see, if I sponsor one person, I've added one person, addition. But if that person sponsors two people, there's now a multiplying effect coming in. And we never know where this could lead us to. Let me say this again. Some of you will have heard this, but my business in Uganda, which you're part of, came 13 years after we joined the business. And how that came is I found somebody who referred me to somebody who started. The first one didn't. That person took me to somebody to whom I'd already spoken, who said no. But when his friend who now started came along, they said yes. And 3-4 levels down from them came Dr. Edward Nesezanambasi, who were also living in East London at that stage. And out of them, eventually, the connection to you people in Uganda. Well, that's 13 years down the road. So the fact is, we never know when a big breakthrough can come. The challenge is to be there when it does come. Another example it's about roughly 16, 17 years ago, through a downline in Kenya, we got a very good contact